Today we're looking at management techniques that work and some that are really beneficial to others. And as we look at what the Founding Fathers did, we're able to see some magnificent strides they made. The person I'm talking to right now joins us live on Skype video here, Dr. Rebecca Staton-Reinstein, and she joins us from her office in Miami. Good to have you with us today, Rebecca.
I'm glad to be here. How you doing today, Terry?
I am doing fine, and I love your book here, Conventional Wisdom, and I love the way you have this. You say it's how today's leaders plan, perform, and progress like the Founding Fathers. I think that's great. By the way, did I say that right, to progress like the Founding Fathers, or progress?
I would say progress.
Progress. Well, they did both, I think, in a good way. And I love your cover, the way you put it together, because you've got the Founding Fathers here in their familiar poses, but they're dressed up in clothes today. You talk about that in your book. Tell me what your book is about and how leaders today can tap into that wisdom.
Well, essentially, I'm looking at the Constitutional Convention of 1787 as a strategic planning session. And the 55 guys who assembled in Philadelphia in that long, hot summer many years ago, 222 years ago, as a matter of fact, were trying to create a government that would work. The country was falling apart. The inflation was rampant. Foreclosures were so bad that there'd already been violence as farmers who were being foreclosed on took over the local courts and eventually tried to march on the arsenal in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Wow.
The famous Shays Rebellion. And Shays Rebellion really shook up a lot of people because they realized things had really come to a terrible state, and that the Continental Congress, or the Confederation Congress, simply was inept and could not, in fact, act, because they couldn't do anything. They couldn't raise money. They couldn't require the states to do anything unless all 13 states agreed, and that was never happening.
Yes. And they had a lot of problems then. And the thing I love about your book is you talk about the issues that they went through and then how we can relate to that to real-world leaders today. Tell me about how you did that in the book.
Well, a lot of the problems they were facing were the same type we face today.
Yeah.
And some of them economic, some of them political, some of them based on international threats. Today's leaders can learn from how the Founding Fathers, the framers of the Constitution, handled these things and approached them. And one of the things that we noticed about the framers is that they had two characteristics of leadership that were absolutely critical. The first is that they had a vision. They really were very clear about where they wanted to go and what the country needed to look like. And secondly, they could execute on that vision. They could come up with a plan, they could execute the plan, they could follow the plan, and they could make that vision a reality.
Yeah, that's very important.
We said this is critical, and then we went out and found modern leaders, CEOs, city managers, other executives, who had a reputation for being both visionary and able to execute. And we weave together the two stories, the framers and the modern leaders, and show any contemporary leader how you can execute on your vision, how you can make it a reality.
Okay, so you talk to real-world leaders, and when I read your book, I loved it, and the people that you talk to. Give us some examples in this interview here of the kind of people that you talk to and what they said that worked so well for them today, drawing from principles from our Founding Fathers. Well,
sure. One of the people I talked to was Greg Swinton, who's the CEO at Ryder System, the big trucks that you see on the road in all probability. And Greg is a very special leader because he himself loves history and is always talking about historical examples. He talked, in fact, when he talked with me, he often quoted from John Adams or George Washington or Ben Franklin. And he uses these historical leaders as guides for himself. When he took over Ryder, it was in a difficult position, almost 10 years ago now, and they simply weren't living up to their potential. And Greg's job was to go in there and say, what can writer really be, and how can it, in fact, live up to that potential? He sat down and created that vision, and then a plan to get there, and within a few years, he turned the company around and started to grow it. So it wasn't the case of going in and doing the slash and burn type of turnaround. Yes, they had to tighten their belt in a number of ways, but Greg's vision was always to prepare them for real growth, which is in fact what he did, and the company has soared under his leadership.
Yes, that's the thing I like about your book is you talk about the principles there from the Founding Fathers, conventional wisdom, as well as how this works in the real world today. Matter of fact, one of the things that you and I were mentioning before we started recording that I loved here on page 159, you were talking about contemporary leaders who take on the Madison role must have stamina. This is something we don't hear about a lot in management books. Tell me about the stamina that you're talking about here that Madison had.
Well, Madison is a fascinating character because of the fact that physically he was very small, and even among his contemporaries, and his health was always a problem for him. He suffered from what he described as bilious indigestion.
Bilious indigestion. Sounds like a good 18th century term.
Yes, I think it was a combination of several things that we might diagnose today, but basically it made him sick as a dog most of the time.
Ooh.
It was brutally hot. They had all the windows and doors sealed so that they could have some real discussions in private and really hammer this thing out. Madison was there. They met every day. They met 6 days a week. They start about 10 in the morning. They finish up about 4. They do not take a break for lunch or anything else. And they're not sitting around with their bottled water and their catered luncheons.
And the air conditioning wasn't working that day, I understand.
Wasn't working that day. So there they are, and again, they're dressed in all that heavy 18th century garb. Madison was there day in and day out. As he wrote himself, he seldom was gone for more than maybe 15 minutes for a quick bio break. He took voluminous notes. He wrote down in his own type of shorthand what everybody's saying. It's because of Madison, in fact, we know what was said there. He took his notes, wrote down every single argument. Then he went home at night after, of course, they had dinner and they had events in the evening that he always went to. And then at night, after all of that was over, he sat up half the night rewriting his notes in longhand.
Wow.
So that they would be readable and he'd capture everything. He was also on several committees. The committees usually met first thing in the morning, so he was often at the committee meetings. And he did this for 4 months.
Yeah, and it's very important to do that, and those are good lessons. Again, as I was going through the book and reading it, it was just packed full of nugget after nugget, a book that you just can't put down. I sat down and read it all the way through, found it very, very helpful, and I know this is going to be helpful to a lot of people. If someone wants to get information on this, or they want to purchase the book, they want to read more about it, what's the best place for them to go and find out about that?
The publisher set up a website, www.conventionalwisdomcenter.com.
Okay. Conventionalwisdomcenter.com, and they can get more information on that. And if they want to get in touch with you directly, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The easiest way is to come on over to my website, which is advantageleadership.com, and all of our contact information is on there.
Wonderful. Well, Rebecca, thank you very much for joining us today. It's a great book, and I know one that will help many people in many ways. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it thoroughly.